move the impedance significantly in the right direction to where it's useful. So that's really the big issue. And then, I've always believed that 450 line is not as efficient as 600. But after doing a bunch of modeling and back and forth, predominantly 600 ohm line is more efficient, but not always. And when you're running a high SWR on any feed line, you're going to get a transformer, and if that impedance is if it gets shifted low by this transformer scenario, then the I squared R losses go up and the efficiency goes down. So on this, on my lash up here, the modeling is saying on this band that 450 line is about 1% better in efficiency than the 600, but that's kind of an unusual situation.
Yeah, and 1% isn't much, but yeah, it is fascinating. For me, I had 450 ohm lineup for years, and the initial problem I had was I just used the standard window line that was solid conductor, and with the monsoon storms here, I had the conductor break, in one leg, and of course that's difficult to find, right? So that was a real problem. Well, when I determined that that's what's happened, I went to the stranded 450, and then I put current meters in, so I could monitor the current on each leg, make sure it was balanced and whatnot. That seemed to work, but if any wind came up at all or any rain, it would throw the tuning out. Yeah, especially the wind. You would see the max change as the 450 would swing around. That window line really grabs the wind. It has a lot of surface area and it just moves all over the place. Did it really cause me a problem? No, other than it was annoying to watch the max change as I was sitting here keyed down. When it rained, though, it would change significantly, and that would require me to retune it. And so I thought, well, let me go to the true ladder line 600. So I did that, and I bought one and put it up. And of course, it didn't do that. It could be raining, and the match wouldn't change.
Yeah, we're building a 450 the same way, so I have high hopes that the 450 will exhibit the same characteristics as the 600. The only difference between the two is we're running a 1 foot spacing, spreader spacing instead of 2.
1 foot?
Correct.
What do you mean? The 600 isn't 1 foot.
600 is 2 feet.
But between each wire?
No, spreader spacing between spreaders.
Oh, I was like, what the heck is he talking about? Okay, so yeah, there's not as many spreaders up the line.
Yeah, there's twice as many spreaders on the 450 as there is a 600, and the jury's still out as to whether there'll be an effect with precip and that sort of thing, but I'm thinking probably not. But it's way different than window line. Anyway, if you go to our site, and up at the top there's a tab called 450 True Ladder Line -new, and there's a couple 3 pictures of the actual line here at this QTH.
Yep, I saw that. Yeah, we looked at that. So let's say for 100 feet of line, what's the weight difference? Because the 450 has to weigh more, right?
Yeah, it'll weigh more, but it's probably almost immeasurable. Well, actually, no, that's not the case. I take that back. It actually will weigh about the same, Clark, because the spacing between the conductors is down to 1 inch instead of about 3.5. So it probably weighs less.
That would be a good marketing angle if you guys were to weigh 100 feet of the 600 and the 450, because you're right, you have a lot less spacer there. You have more spacers, but it would really be interesting to see.
Yeah, we'll have to do that for sure. I was mostly interested in the comparative loss between the two lines. And after doing a bunch of modeling, and both with the 450 and the 600, the impedance is a big issue presented to the ATU, and that's what really makes a difference. So the numbers bounce up and down, and you can't. There's no hard fast rule. Basically, the modeling is going to tell you what's going on.
Yeah. So do you find the big difference is the low bands or the high bands?
Let's see. As I remember, I'm thinking, I've done most of the studies on 80. Well, I do 168 and 40 typically. The higher bands, there's not, as you go lower in frequency, the impedance swings are more radical. 160 is the most radical. As you go higher in frequency, the impedance swing tightens up on the Smith chart. So by far the biggest issue is going to be on 160 and then 80 right behind it.
Yeah, and you say the advantage is closer spaced.
Yes and no. It just depends on the antenna installation and the feed line length.
Yeah, I know. It's all up in the air, right? Well, in his case, we had basically the choice of coax underground out 150 to 200 feet to a little doghouse where the tuner would reside, and then ladder line out from there. And I personally kind of pushed that. I thought, let's get the coax out of the house all the way out there. We're going to have a dual inductor tuner, like you run out there, and then ladder line down the fence up the tower. But I don't know. The last time I talked to him, he said, it's 950 feet, but the last installation at his last house was probably 400 feet. And he ran it expertly, just right out of the shack, across the yard, turned, went down the fence, up the tower, and all that. So he said, I think I'm just going to do ladder line the entire way.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, and I would. We also build ladder line with number 14, and I would recommend that on such a long run. As you know, most of feed line losses are incurred because of I²R losses. You knew that, right?
Yeah, and he's an electrician, so he has a ton of wire, and I think he was talking about 14.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We have customers who are looking at have antennas that far away. They have beams operating at 50 ohms. And I've been toying, they've quizzed us down about, hey, could I use ladder line to get out there? The problem is they're feeding a 50 ohm antenna. So I've been toying with the idea of doing a 9-to-1 balun on each end. And I need to do that and test it and see what kind of losses we're looking at.
Well, DX Engineering offers that right now. They've got 2 9-to-1 baluns, and one mounts, at one side of the coax, and then they sell you, they tell you can run 1,000 foot of ladder line, and then to the other balun and back to coax it up the tower.
What do they get for one of those 9-to-1s? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't know. You'd have to go on there, Gary, and talk and search and see. But it should be right in their catalog. They had a whole thing about it years back where they said, if you have anything more than 300 foot, this would be significantly less loss.
Yeah, I need to get it on the bench and put the network analyzer to it. That's what I need to do, and I got too many things going on, but it would be interesting. But what you were suggesting about putting the ATU out there, that's basically what I'm doing here. My ATU is at the base of the tower, and I'm feeding the ATU with about 200 feet of half-inch hard line.
Yeah, I know, and I told him that, but I don't know. You know, he's built his own antenna tuners for years in link coupled and different ones, and I know him. He's saying now that he's only going to get on 80 meters, but you and I know probably about 6 months he's going to want to get on 40, right? Because he's going to be there in the daytime. And so it's just going to be a whole lot easier for him if he has the ladder line going all the way to the shack.
Well, you know, when you talk to him, mention to him that I'd be happy to help him if he wants to build one. I manufacture sprockets for stepper motors and that kind of stuff, so I could definitely help him out.
I already sent him your links, and he was drooling over your tuners, and I said, let me ask Gary if, because he's kind of a do-it-yourself type of guy, so he would probably want to do it that way, but, I was, I don't know, 15 years ago, Gary, we all ran link coupled, right? And that's what he knows, and that's what he was thinking. But I thought, maybe you need to look into a dual inductor. He happens to have on hand a bunch of very, very large broadcast roller inductors. And I don't know sitting here what the value of those are, but he sent me some picture, and they're matched, and I thought, man, you could build a hell of a tuner out of those.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, that's the ticket. The interesting thing about a balanced tuner is the rollers only have to take the line current, so you're not talking big honking rollers like you are with a T network.
Got it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about they don't need to take full current. I'm just sitting here being nosy. I run the same situation here with the antenna tuner at the base of my antenna, fed with 600 ohm ladder line. Over.
Oh, very good. So are you using a balanced tuner or a T network?
A balanced tuner. I got a dual set of rollers with a cap in the middle. And right now I'm feeding it with all kind of relays to switch it inside the house. I just got to get something to computer automated. Over.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. The name is Barry. The call is 16 Victor Ocean Henry. It's 600 ohm ladder line. It's 14 gauge. It's only two solid pieces, 135 or so feet, 65 each side of center. 600 ohm with the spacing running down to the tuner in a waterproof box, and from there into the shack with coax.
Oh, super. So how are you controlling the ATU?
I got some motors.
Be right back.
Some stepper motors and some relays and a bunch of switches so I can turn them and make them go and look for a low SWR in the shack. Over.
Oh, neat. Very good. It's Barry, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good, Barry. Well, we market a box called the Stepper Tune-BT, which is designed to control two stepper motors with memories, and we also control the capacitor switching, all tied to the memories as well. So it's transparent as you change from one band to another.
What's this website? I'm going to look at that.
It would be TrueLadderLine.com or W7FG True Ladder Line, one of the two. And I've been doing the same thing you're doing here for several years. I've got about 200 feet of half-inch hardline going out to the base of the tower, and then I remotely control the ATU with the Stepper Tune BT. And the Stepper Tune has the ability of controlling two stepper motors with 16 memories, and also the capacitor switching, which would be high and low impedance, would be one control, and then two more controls for another capacitor, a fixed capacitor in parallel if you need it, or a second one, and you can do any combination of those.
Yeah, you know what, man? Gary, I've talked to you before, I believe, because I got two of your antennas with 600 ohm ladder line. We use them for field day, and that's where I got the idea from, True Ladder Line. So I remember ordering an antenna. I believe it was 132 foot across the top with 50 50 feet of feed. It's our field day antennas that we use every year. Over.
Oh, very good. Well, how have they worked for you?
Well, I got to tell you, I'm totally sold on doublets. I always have been. They work fantastic. That's what I'm talking on right now. Not your model, but the same idea. It's I don't know, 60 feet or so of feed to that tuner that I told you about, and 132 feet. The spacers that I'm using are kind of unique. I got them off the internet or something. A guy had a package of 35, and I got them off the internet, and they work sort of. The problem is they slide up and down, and with your antenna, they don't slide. The tubing doesn't slide. I just bugs me to have to go out there and adjust them all the time because they move up and down the ladder line. Over.
Yeah, I hear you there. Yeah, with our spreaders, once you put them on that on the conductor, boy, you take them off. Sometimes you'll pull insulation with it.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, I got two of them. We use them for field day, and it's kind of a torn thing. I don't mean to cut the other gentleman out. It's a torn thing because we got antennas in close proximity, and running for field day, we're running a lot of time 3 antennas, and dipoles are usually better for that situation than doublets are. So we used to run resonant doublet and resonant dipoles for each of the stations, one for 40 and one for 80. And I started to use the doublet, and I like the idea of getting everything I got can get up to the antenna. And a lot of guys want me to go back to dipoles because the dipoles are not. Or they're friendlier than open feed. Over.
Well, okay, you're talking about a resonant antenna versus a non-resonant.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, a lot of guys think that a resonant antenna operates on an entire band, but that's not true. It's only resonant on one frequency, and once you start getting some reactance at the feed point, it's all of a sudden become non-resonant. And the further you deviate from that one frequency, the more non-resonant it is.
Amen.
Yeah.
Signal into San Diego.
Make sure I got it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. No. What we have at field days, we run a dedicated station on a dedicated band. So we're running one antenna on 80, and the radio stays on 80. One on 40, and it stays that way. And the argument always is for resonant versus non-resonant. And the reason I like to use the doublet is because it'll go anywhere up and down, and it's a great antenna for work, and I'm totally sold on them. I've been using this doublet for 10 years, and I haven't found a better working antenna on all of the bands than anything else other than this. Over.
Oh yeah, I hear you there. Well, we have a large number of followers. And I've not heard of a single one who has gone back to some other antenna after going to the non-resonant antenna with ladder line.
So, Gary, also explain, because the issue that I run into is if you have ladder line, hams tend to think that the antenna still has to be resonant, right? It's something they can't grasp. So they think that they need to still tune the antenna, which they do not need to do because the ladder line is lossless. So that do you still find people trying to tune the antenna?
The big messy part is with a resonant antenna and fed with coax. If you QSY away from that resonance, especially on 75 or 80, you move quite a ways, your SWR starts climbing seriously, so then they put a tuner on it at the end of the coax and make it a one-to-one match, and they think that life is wonderful when it really isn't.
Yeah, I understand that. What I'm talking about, though, is when people go to ladder line, a lot of people still think that the antenna itself must be resonant, but it doesn't need to be.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You know, one of the, when I first started in ham radio, my first ticket in '62, antenna was my big quandary, as it is with most hams, and I had a 1957 ARRL handbook, and in there, they mostly dwelled on ladder line because coax was really just starting to come in the amateur community. So they had a part of a chapter on coax, but they mostly dwelled on ladder line. And they were really heavy duty on running that 600 ohm ladder line up and then putting a big hulking matching network at the antenna feed point with, up there in the air on this
I do have other ones, so I
dipole.
might have a 57.
And back in '62, I was just a kid then, and I looked at that and I said, and so they had to tune it for the frequency they wanted to operate. And I'm thinking, now why would I want to put something like that up in the air that I'd have to drop down every time I want a QSY?
Yeah, that's crazy. And the articles that I read, and the guy that kind of put me to ladder line was Lou McCoy. He used to write all those articles about ladder line and building different tuners, and every single article you ever read by the man, he would say the length of wire doesn't matter. So it's a ladder line fed doublet. Put as much wire you can on your property.
Yeah. Well, have you ever wondered why a HF mobile antenna on 75 meters is so inefficient?
Well, because it's so short.
Well, it's so short, but that's really not the issue.
Well, because it has to be matched, right?
Well, it's because the feed point is the impedance is extremely low. The resistive part is extremely low, so the current is extremely high. So then we stick a coil in there to make it look like it's a quarter wave to get a reasonable match to coax, and the current is extremely high in that coil, and therefore you're losing most of your power right in the coil.
Yeah, like a shunt coil, and then they sometimes use a shunt coil.
Well, no, I'm talking about the loading coil, not the shunt coil.
Yeah, it's all inductor because the impedance is so low.
Right, and therefore the I2R losses are sky high, and that's the reason why an HF mobile antenna on the lower frequencies is so inefficient.
Yeah. You ever looked at the? I used to have a T368 transmitter, and then they had an antenna tuner, a couple different ones that sat on top of the transmitter, and if they were installed into the mobile communications truck, and they had a whip off the back of the truck, but they could cover 2 through 30. Well, actually, not 30. They would go back up to 20 meters or so. But anyways, that was one hell of a tuner. If you look at the design of that thing, high current, had vacuum caps everywhere.
Yeah, and you take a look at the Scorpion mobile antenna. The reason it's such an effective antenna is because Ron has put some serious conductor size in there to minimize those losses.
Yep.
Gary, what are you running, man?
Well, I'm using an Elecraft K4 to a homebrew 8877 at 1500.
And what's the antenna?
It's a 215-foot non-resonant dipole. It's presently fed with 450 line with a balanced ATU at the base of the tower.
Yeah, you're 40 over. I'm running the radio's a 7610, and amplifier is a couple of 3500Gs. It's homebrew as well, and a doublet up feet.
Oh, very nice. Well, you're running between 20 and 30 here on the K4. Nice signal.
Yeah, I try, man. I don't have no tower up yet, so That's what I was going to try to do, get a tower up for before Christmas. But I'm going to still have this doublet off the side of it for 40 and 80. I'll never change this. But the quality of audio coming out of your radio, that K4 is superb as well.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, and the check is in the mail. Well, before we get off the subject, I got to tell you all a little experience I had here about a month ago. I modeled this antenna for 160, 80, and 40, and the idea was to get the lowest SWR for all three bands in order to minimize losses. And I came up with 215 feet. Well, then I got a wild hair a couple of months ago to try this thing on 20 meters, which I really hadn't designed it for. And so lo and behold, the ETU is able to resolve the impedance, and I'm on the air with it, and I'm running A/B tests between my 4-element Yagi, which is about 10 feet above my wire antenna, my dipole. And would you believe I talked to stations as far away as Panama on 20 meters, and then locals around the states. And would you believe both of those antennas ran neck and neck with each other?
Yeah, I do believe it. It's amazing, but I do believe it.
And I think the reason is because the Yagi, even though it does have directivity and front to back and front to side, it's got traps in it, and you know the rest of the story on that.
Well, some traps, I've dove off the deep end in traps. If you do the same, it's a real eye-opener. Some antennas, they do have, in fact, lossy traps. Other antennas don't, because the traps are tuned well below the bands. And so when you're actually on the band, the trap is not contributing to as much loss. We know that now because of computer modeling software that's out there with traps. So they have a bad name because if they're tuned to the band, they are in fact lossy. But it shouldn't be a blanket statement. But with that, I'll tell you a story. I used to be on 20 meters quite a bit, and there was a contest station up in Canada, a big one, and they had, I think at the time, six towers up, and they had stacked beams, and it was one of these stations where guys would come into the station and operate it whatever they wanted. They had their own key, and it was a very, very high-end contest station. And so the one guy used to be on there in the daytime, so I got to know him. I was just sitting there working and had 20 meters on, and I said, man, you're like 40 over no matter what time of year it is. You're just blasting in here. And he said, yeah, funny story. He said, I have the option on 20 meters right now to use multiple stacked beams on multiple towers. They're faced in different directions into Europe and so forth, and they work great. He said, but a couple years ago, we put up a loop between all of the towers. So he said it was 500 or 600 foot of wire, and we fed it with ladder line down to a Johnson matchbox in the middle of the shack here. And we thought, well, that'll be nice for spotting. We'll just use it for when we spot, and somebody could be on that while we're doing other things. And he said, we fight over it. He said, if it's the perfect situation, and I need to put a lot of signal into Europe or into one specific area, sometimes, but not all the time, sometimes I switch to the stacked Yagis, and it's a little better. He said, however, 90% of the time, the big loop beats all the Yagis.
Yeah, I could believe it. And I think, too, Clark, this K7 EMF, I think, too, Clark, You know, we're talking about traps. I was thinking more in terms of the inductors. When the inductor of the trap is functioning to make the antenna look electrically longer, that's where the losses come in.
Yeah, if you study them though, between antenna manufacturers, they don't have the traps tuned at the same frequency. It's kind of a rabbit hole, and I'm going to warn you, but it's worthwhile as an engineer to go down that rabbit hole. But they don't have the traps tuned at the same frequency per antenna manufacturer. So some of them, they have them tuned within band or just maybe right below the band. And of course, when you do that, you know, there can be some loss there. However, they've proven over and over and over, if the thing is designed properly and it's not within the band, then the losses are minimal.
Oh, that's interesting. That is interesting. I did notice that Mosley too.
Yeah, this radio just sounds
band,
amazing.
it's below, so I've often wondered about that. Well, anyway, on this A/B test that I was doing between the two antennas, sometimes the Yagi would be 5 to 10 dB stronger than the wire antenna, and then at other times it'd be just the opposite. And you know, on the long pole, they pretty much were neck and neck.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you another quick story here. I had an 80-meter vertical set up years ago in the middle of the backyard. Yeah, and it was, of course, not 80 meters. I think it was 60 or something, 65 feet high. But I had an 80-meter resonant vertical. And then I also had ladder line. I had a ladder line doublet with about 150-foot horizontal wire, 600-ohm line, your guys' line, down to the shack to a Johnson tuner. And I was really into old receivers at the time, and I stumbled upon these ft710 Hammerlins, and they had Northern Radio written on them. And so I had these things. I did some research and found out Northern Radio modified the Hammerlin receivers for dual diversity, and I made all the cables and hooked it all up. But basically, the way they worked was the antennas, one antenna came into each receiver, but yet the radio's IF went across. And so you could have one radio was the master. So if I had it tuned to this frequency, the other radio would be on that same frequency. And the S meters would be, you know, one was horizontal, one was vertical. And this was incredible, because I used to sit there and listen to everybody late night, you know, on 80 meters. The absolute moment that the horizontal faded, even for a moment, the vertical antenna took over. They actually traded places the entire time.
Now, isn't that bizarre?
I'm telling you, because before I hooked that up, I used to use, my favorite activity was, hey, I'm on the vertical, now I'm on the dipole, I'm on the vertical, I'm on the dipole, switch back and forth, right? And everybody saying, well, you know what, you're stronger on the dipole than another guy, you know, out in Texas somewhere. No, actually, you're stronger on the vertical, you know, and it's just like, almost no rhyme or reason to it. But when I hooked up the receivers that way, it was just fascinating. I had them rack mounted, and you would just sit there all night and watch the S meters trade places.
Oh, that would be mesmerizing.
It really was. So I don't doubt
that's pretty
that, you know, in some instances, the Yagis were king, right? But in others, well, maybe there was some other angle coming in. I don't know.
Yeah, I tell you, there's a bunch of mysteries there.
Some phasing. That's switching back and forth over phase.
Yeah.
To make sure I got it. I got a lot to say about loops in my young days when I was a young ham and didn't have much money. I ran a set of delta loops for 10, 15, and 20, one inside of each other, suspended from a tree. And I worked, I got my first DXCC that way. Independent feeds for each one of them, and each loop had his own piece of 75 ohm coax as a matching stub. The one was inside the other, and ran them all the way down to a antenna switch, and I would switch between the three for 10, 15, or 20. And oh boy, did those loops work good for me. N6VOH.
Boy, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, they perform very, very well, one inside the other. And a lot of guys nowadays use balance to feed them. I had a piece of I had a whole roll of Belden 75 ohm coax that I got from one of the cable guys. It wasn't the aluminum braid stuff; it was real copper, and I would make the matching stubs for each one of them. Take a pill bottle, put it on the end of it, and a SO239 connector through the top of the pill bottom, and then I would waterproof them out with some epoxy and keep the water out of them. And each one of them would hang off to a little support, and they ran into the shack, and I had three separate pieces of coax. I gotta tell you, those loops are quiet, and they were fed horizontal in the bottom and the middle. And man, did I have a good time with those. But that's what you had to do in the day when you had no money. Now I look around at my shack, and it's pretty modernized. I remember days when everything was half homebrew and tore up, and I remember my first amplifier that I made. It by today's standards, it wouldn't be too safe.
Well, I tell you, my first directional antenna was a quad because I didn't have any money either, and it did amazingly well.
Hey, Gary,
Yes.
have you ever used or modeled where people will use coax sections to replace ladder line sections? So I see this in my old handbooks, where they show you using, 250 ohms or 275 ohm coaxes up through the attic, and then out to the roof, and then ladder line out from there. Or sometimes you'll see it where they'll say to put coax through the wall, and then the ladder line into that, and then out of that. Have you ever modeled that?
No, I have not, but I would, I'll be a little bit concerned about it because, what happens to the field cancellation between the two conductors? That's a big question.
Yeah, that's what the handbook shows, though, and a lot of guys will tell you put coax through the wall, and then have the ladder line at the wall, and then on the other side go out. When I had to do mine, this is my house, I've owned it forever, I just drilled a hole right through the wall and ran the insulated wire straight out the wall. There was no conduit or metal anywhere near that, and that's just the way I ran it for years. But I think a lot of guys do that, so I was just curious your opinion.
Well, we do have some customers who have done that, but I have never tried it, and I really prefer not to. I'm with you. I would rather run, say, a quarter-inch hole through the wall. And the thing you got to be careful of in doing that is if you might have metallized insulation, or you've got the metal foil on one side. So probably a good idea to run a pretty good insulator through the wall to make sure you don't burn the house down.
Yeah, I didn't have any of that here. I just drilled the hole, ran the wires through, and sealed them both sides, and it's been like that for years. But that makes sense. But yeah, anyways, I was just thinking about that. One of my handbooks here, it talks about running it all the way through the attic with coax, and then at the roof line coming out, and then running ladder line. And I thought, it can't be balanced if it's shielded, right?
I wouldn't think so. You know, balanced is a function of the two fields canceling each other out. And if you don't get cancellation, you know, who knows? The jury's out on that one.
What is your rule of thumb of how far the ladder line needs to be away from metal? And let's assume that it is in fact balanced.
Comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you know what that idea you're talking about when they do that, what they also do is tie the ground braids both together and go to ground with those. So they're running two solid conductors straight through the wall. I've seen that a number of times. I even think I've tried it. Running two solid pieces of coax, they have to be identically the same length, and you're tying both pieces of ground braid together on both sides. Over.
Well, then that states that it can't be open wire line, right, Gary?
Well, you know, it's hard to say. You know, if you one of the beauties of a balanced ATU is that it provides a signal to the two conductors of the balanced line with identical level of signals and exactly 180 out of phase. So I suppose you could think of that with the coax feed-through thing. You know, maybe the feed point is outside, you know, on the far end of the of those two coaxes, you know, on the ladder line side. So, you know, maybe it would play. And if you use a balun or a balanced feed, you know, a symmetrical feed, you know, maybe it would play. I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot of times. I've seen guys run that a lot of times. Gary, I got a quick question for you, man. That tune box that you use to tune the cap and the rollers, how long is the maximum you can run wire on that to the tuner?
Well, I'm running about 200 feet of Cat 5 cable. And it depends on the stepper motor you're using and how much current it requires. I like to use motors, 12-volt motors that require somewhere around a half an amp of current. And then I operate the stepper tune on a 24-volt supply, and I can usually acquire my desired current. And I get quite good torque that way. So that's the big trick, is to run the supply voltage up. We can't go any higher than 24 volts because the 5-volt regulator in the processor can't take any higher voltage than that. I imagine if I switched to a different regulator, we could go on up higher, because the H drivers in the stepper tune are good for, I think, is 50 volts. So anyway, how long a run are you thinking about, Barry?
About 60 feet, about 60, 65 feet.
Oh, you'd have no trouble there at all. It requires two Cat 5 cables to make it play, or at least that's what I use. One Cat 5 cable for the two stepper motors, and then the other Cat 5 for the capacitor control, and you're not using all 8 of the second one for the capacitor control.
I might have to look at that. That's something that I need to get going. Yeah, I forget where I bought the rollers, man. I bought the rollers from some guy, and he sent them to me. He handmade them, and he makes a tuner to go with the antenna. Sent me a couple of rollers, and they're beautiful. I just gotta, the ones that are out there, I gotta get out and swap those out. Those are some ugly ones, but I've been saving these new ones here to put in the new version of the tuner that I'm gonna make. So, and the guy sent me a differential capacitor or two as well. He sent me 2 rollers and a differential capacitor with some big old wide spacing on it. So eventually I'll get around to building this tuner, and that box is definitely a something to think about. But I'll send you an email. I'm looking at your website now. Just remember me when I send you an email, and we'll talk. I'm going to QSY here for a minute. Actually, I'm going to turn the radio off. I got to go in here and get something done. I got to finish writing an article. But it's been a pleasure, and to the other gentlemen, thanks for letting me jump in. Been a pleasure to talk to both of you guys, and wish you the best of 73 and a happy holiday. We'll see you later. Kilowatt 7 Echo Mike Fox, I believe, and the other gentleman, I didn't get your call. November 6th, Victoria Ocean Hotel. We'll hang around for a second for a final.
Okay, Barry. Barry, what kind of relays are you using in your ATU?
A couple of vacuum relays. I got ended up having a bunch of vacuum relays from Russia. I got about 3 or 4 of those big green relays. Over.
Oh, okay. Perfect. I think those are probably 24-volt coils, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They're 24-volt coils.
Yeah, see, that works really good with running 24 volts on the stepper tune. That way you control those relays with a 24-volt signal from the stepper tune. So that would all play very nicely. Well, the differential capacitor is the biggest problem. If you could, I would swing, well, you can't do that either. Yeah, you might. If you could swing half of the stators around so that you could make that a single capacitor instead of a differential, that would be good. But a differential capacitor and a balanced ATU, a balanced L, isn't going to do you much good.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, you're right about that. You know what? I think they will turn around. I'm almost sure they will, just looking at it. If not, I got 2 more.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, I'd be happy to help you out with drive sprockets, and I'm set up to use cog belt for drives. So it's a very positive drive, and it also provides insulation, isolation, and all that. Anyway, I'd be happy to help if I can. N6 VOH, K7 EMF, and over to you, Clark.
All right, hey, 73s, I just want to let you know we're on here most nights about 7 o'clock. So we'd love to have you join us.
Okay, no problem. I'll stop by, man. Very interesting conversation. I love antennas. My old mentor tells me, he says, many years ago, he says, if you got $100, you spend 99 on the antenna, dollar on the radio. Hey, well, what's your caller?
Yeah, it's Whiskey 7, Whiskey Radio X-Ray, a W7WRX. And we're on here just about every night about 7 o'clock. You know, we're normally on here for about an hour, maybe 2 hours, but we're a little late tonight. But yeah, it'd be great to have you join us, man.
No problem. Thanks for the invite, and I will stop by. I promise you. I enjoyed the conversation. You know, anymore on the radio these days, you run into a lot of everything else but technical talk, and it's because we're getting older, and a lot of our good tech guys are leaving us. But I love talking about antennas. 73. We'll see you later. Over.
All right. Yeah. Well, when Gary gets on here, it's no holds barred. We talk technical all night.
Well, either that or we fool a lot of people. Anyway, thanks for breaking in, Barry. Very nice QSO, and we look forward to doing it again soon.
Okay, no problem there, Gary. Thanks, 73.
N6MUD.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, good evening, guys. N6MUD, Craig here.
Yeah, go for it.
Was that Greg?
It was, but then he just went away.
30 to 40 over signal here in the San Diego. I'm kind of curious, what's your QTH out there?
I'm in Phoenix. I'm 10 to 15 miles southeast of Phoenix.
And I'm about 50 miles north and west of Phoenix in the little town of Wickenburg, Greg.
Oh, interesting. All right. I thought you were local, man, by that huge signal there. All right. I've just been listening to you guys talk for the past hour or so in a fascinating conversation. I run a 40-meter loop. I don't get on 80 very often. I don't have the space for an antenna that big, but I'm trying to get my random wire 9-to-1 to tune up on this band, so at least I can be heard for a little bit out there. But anyway, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'm just kind of getting my hands a little wet here in 80 meters. Not sure how well I'm doing, but like I say, I'm just using a 9-to-1 random wire, about 75 feet of wire. Going through an amplifier, doing about 1,500 watts here. Over.
So is that an NFAD, Greg?
It's an NFAD. It's a 9-to-1 random NFAD.
Okay, you're doing pretty good running power through a 9-to-1. I'm impressed.
Well, I'm kind of curious. Do I have any RF in my audio? That's the first thing I want to ask you there.
Well, you're bumping about plus 20 here.
Yeah, you're 20 plus. But I'm just kind of curious. Do you hear any RF in the audio? I'm hoping I don't have any RF, but it's hard for me to see.
No, it's clean here. How about you, Clark?
No, it's clean, and you have a nice, strong signal here. Your audio is a little narrow, like maybe set up for DX or something. But man, I mean, you have 15, 20 dB over 9 signal.
Okay, well, I'm running 4 kilohertz wide right now. Let me take a look here. I'm on an SDR. It's a Hermes Light, which is kind of like the none. My audio shouldn't be too narrow. I'm 4 kilohertz wide there, over.
Yeah, I don't hear 4 kilohertz at all. I'm familiar with the Hermes. I think Gary will tell you the same thing. It's a little narrow, right?
Yeah, give us another transmission, Greg.
Yeah, N6MUD, November 6 Mike Uniform Delta, 4 kilohertz right on 50 low, 4,000 high, so I should be around 4 kilohertz wide. My EQ, I don't know, maybe my EQ is messed up. I gotta look at that, but at least my signal should be 4 kilohertz right.
Yep, that's what I'm seeing. I widened out the display, and you're right at 4, although your high end is down. But you know, the high end is going to be typically sibilance anyway. So, but I noticed a little bit. You've got low end, but not right in close to the center frequency. So I would say you're probably lopping off the low end a little bit.
Yeah, more lows, lots more lows.
Yeah, I can do that. Give me 1 second here.
What kind of a mic are you using, Greg?
Sure, SM7B. Give me 1 second. I'll make it. Do you guys say I need more lows?
Lots more lows. Yeah, you're almost all of your energy is around 1K to 2K.
All right, how's that? N6MUD, 0 to 4,000 there, over.
1,000 times better. Can you give us more lows?
Oh yeah, I can give you more lows. Give me 1 sec.
Yeah, it still sounds narrow to me, Clark. How about you?
Well, he's getting there.
Yeah, hold on 1 sec.
ft710.
Hey, John, what's going on, man?
That's all right. I've just been reading stuff on the internet.
No, that's cool. Yeah, I didn't think you'd be out here at 10 o'clock, but yeah, good to have you.
No, I'll get ready to go to bed. I'm going to ask Gary about 300 ohm twin lead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I don't know if you were listening earlier. I was telling him about the time I went up there and saw your 300 ohm line looping back over itself, and thought we have to change that, and you didn't want to change it, but it seems to be working. So, yeah, go ahead.
Why don't you sell any 300 ohm twin lead?
No, we do not. In fact, we've only sold 600 up until recently. Now we're manufacturing 450 as well in the true ladder line format, which is using the same spreader as for the 600, only shorter.
Why don't you sell 300?
Say that again.
Why not the lower ohmage twin lead? I mean, why did you just start selling 450?
Well, the reason that we decided to go to the 450 is because we have customers who have a hard time resolving the impedance presented to the ATU with the 600, mostly with some particular lengths and low antennas above the ground, not very high in elevation. So we decided to add the 450 to give us more, as it were, tools in the toolbox to get a resolution on a particular band. And after doing a bunch of modeling, comparing the two between 600 and 450, the 600 is predominantly more efficient, but under most conditions, it's not that much more efficient to get excited about. So if we can get a resolution on a band and maybe lose a few points in efficiency, it's a good trade-off.
Okay, so I should change. I should upgrade to 450 or 600 or something.
Well, You know, before I answer that, I would love to model it because, giving you an answer off the top of my head is not fair to anybody.
All right, I'm just running 300 because it was handy and affordable, and it was right there. I grabbed it at a ham fest, and it was like, I don't know, it was super cheap, like $10 for like 500 feet or something.
Oh, wow, that's a steal.
Maybe it was 20, I don't remember. It was cheap.
I'm running 300 also.
Yeah, I've got 300 ohm ladder line in my modeling software, so if you want to fire me a text or send me an email with your antenna parameters, I'd love to model it and compare the three impedances and see how it stacks up.
It's just a 80 meter inverted Z.
Okay, how high is the center?
About 35 feet.
And each leg?
I think they're 66 feet.
How much again?
56 feet?
56?
66.
6 feet, okay. And how long is your ladder, your feed line?
That's a good question. I have no idea. It's probably 65 feet, maybe 85. I don't know.
I'm going to say 70. He's sitting on a lower level, Gary, and the ladder line comes up and it goes out and it goes along a patio, and then it kind of doubles back on itself and then goes up off the patio cover up the tree to the dipole. I'm gonna say 70.
Is the patio cover non-metallic?
Yeah, it's wood.
Okay, good. How long is your antenna, John?
66 foot aside, he said.
Okay, that would be what, 132?
Exactly, or you're guessing?
I'm guessing.
Yeah. Say 130, 135 range.
Okay, let's call it 130, and let me stick this in real quick, and I'll be right back.
What I was curious about was, while you're doing that, he has the ladder line coming over the wood patio underneath. Then he has it doubling back because there's excess, and then it loops over itself and then goes up. And so, to me, it's a wad of open wire line there. But I moved it and then he put it back. But I mean, obviously it works. But I'm curious. I mean, obviously, best practice is to have the ladder line by itself all the way up there, right?
So is it, when it's doubled back, is it touching itself?
I think so, right?
When I had the house painted, I took it down. When I put it back up, I got more loops around that beam, and it's not touching itself. It's not double back.
So it loops around a beam and then goes up?
Correct.
Yeah, so it basically, it comes out of the corner of the building, and it runs about, I'm going to say 15, 20 feet, and then it hits a beam, and it loops around there, around the beam, not over itself, and then goes up to the tree.
Oh, that might not be so bad.
Yeah, I mean, because he's really strong now. I mean, he's 40 over here.
The other question Gary asked was how high it was on the ends. And you said 66 feet, and he thought you were talking about the length.
Oh, great point, yeah. No, John, how high are the ends?
I'm going to say 20 feet, but here's the thing. I'm on a ridge of land, and, you go 10 feet away, and all of a sudden you're 10 foot deeper, so it's really hard to give it, off the end.
It's not real critical. It's just kind of a starting point.
Yeah, so Gary, the tree is on the top of a flat portion of land, right? And then just past that, it just drops all the way down. So it's on an embankment. And so, it's like is it really over 20 foot or is it over 100 foot? It's hard to say. It's just right on that embankment.
Yeah, I've got the same kind of deal here to some extent. So, we just kind of give it our best shot.
John, when you rerouted the ladder line, did you have to change the tuner?
I think I did. Actually, I didn't. I was really surprised. And I've got probably about 10 wraps around that beam, and they're spread out about two. I got one between each joist above, so they're like 2 foot apart. Each loop is.
See, I wonder, is it better to cut the ladder line down, Gary, rather than having excess ladder line wrapped around a beam?
I wouldn't wrap it around the beam, but when you cut it to a length, that changes the impedance transformations.
Yep.
Here again, the modeling is the answer.
Yeah, I know. It's weird, right? It's like a lot of things that we think we shouldn't do doesn't seem to actually affect anything.
I've noticed that exactly.
But I have noticed, like when I had ladder line here, the big change for me is when I put current meters in. So I had current meters for each leg. And so, I'd walk in the shack and talk on the radio, and all of a sudden I noticed, hey, the current isn't balanced. And one time in particular, I walked out the backyard, the ladder line on the one side had fallen, and it was just laying on the ground. So it was laying on the ground about 25 feet. So I went over there and hooked the rope back up and pulled it up in the air and came back in, and it was balanced again. So, that's proof that the balance can be affected of how the ladder line is run.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. So, I'd like to do the best I can with what I have and, and not compromise it if I can help it.
Yeah, but, like you said earlier, you sat there and made contact with the ladder line right on the ground, so it's like, what are we doing here? Best practices, but look what he's doing and it works.
Yep, no kidding. Okay, let me run a check on this. So I just finally got the program loaded. So let me tune this thing. I'll be back in a minute.
All right.
Mine's even worse because I got 450 and 300.
So you got both?
Yeah, I didn't have enough. I didn't have enough of either one. I just soldered them together.
Maybe I'll get you a new run for Christmas.
They had rolls and rolls of stuff in the club stuff over there, and every time I grabbed it, it was another damn G5 RV.
I honestly think I have 100 foot of that 450 over here in a box. Would 100 foot work?
Oh, yeah, it's not even that far. What I did was I got fishing line going from the house, going over to one of the fiberglass poles, and then it's like, it kind of reminds me of old train telegraph lines. It goes to the back porch, and then it hangs from some hooks over there.
Hold on a second. I feel bad. The guy on the Hermes, did you adjust your audio?
Yeah, we added some more lows. Is that too much? I'm just kind of curious. N6MUD.
No, you actually sound better and better. Do you have like some kind of like mid-range or highs boosted a lot?
Not really. There's all types of EQs here, but I can add more lows. Is that too much there?
No, it's not too much lows at all. In fact, I'm wondering if that microphone just has a ton of highs. But you'll have to decide. But more lows, less 1K up. Whatever 1K up is for you. I guess you said 4K, so 1K, 2K, 3K, a little less there, maybe 10 dB cut. Boost the bass by another 10 dB and then come back.
Okay, well, there I'm boosting the bass, N6MUD. I don't know if you're noticing this, but I'm boosting it as I'm talking there. Honestly, man, on 40 meters this sounds fine. Not sure why all of a sudden on 80 I got to boost the bass. This SM7D microphone by default has a lot of lows in it there, Ola.
Yeah, it sounds better, but I don't know if there's another setting there that's been set, but you definitely are not bassy by any means.
It almost sounds like he needs to increase his microphone gain just a tiny bit.
Oh, maybe you're right. I was playing with my gain here. Give me 1 second here.
Yeah, I mean, there could be something else, but I mean, you definitely do not have a lot of lows.
I increased it.
Give us more talk.
Yeah, N6 MUD testing 1 2 3 4 4 3 2 1. I increased my mic gain there a little bit. I don't know if this is going to do it there. I'm increasing it a little bit more. I don't know there if that's too much, if it's distorting there or not. But I've never had this issue on any other.
It looks really weird on my waterfall.
Listen to this mic gain movement.
No, I lower the mic gain, but it's. I mean, just trust us when I tell you it's narrow. It just is, man. Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe you got a compressor on, or something's clicked that shouldn't be. But you're not full range, and I hate to be the guy that tells you it's not, but it's just not.
All right, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate it there. I want to know if I'm not sounding good, so I'm going to go offline here, go down the band, and do some monitoring and see if I can hear myself and figure it out. Thanks for the help. Appreciate it, guys. N6MUD.
Try the Utah Web SDR. It'll be pretty obvious on there.
Back down a little bit. I think it sounds quite good, but it sounds narrow, but it could be your voice also.
Yeah, but Gary, I mean, come on. Everybody else on the frequency is full range. They've got full lows, including you, but he's very narrow, like a DX type audio. So I'm sure it's something simple. Something's clicked on the Hermes on the software. But yeah, go offline or whatever. I mean, we're not telling you something's wrong. You're welcome the way you are. But I just wanted to let you know you're a little narrow.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. I'll do some experimentation here. Have a good evening. Thanks for letting me in here. N6MUD. I'll be back if and when I get this all sorted out. Thanks, guys.
Well, Greg, it's not all that bad, so nothing to panic about.
Yeah, for sure. He boosted the lows. It sounds decent, but it's still real peaky up in the mid-range and just a little narrow. I mean, you would expect, Gary, 4KC wide to sound very full.
And I'm watching it on the spectrum, and it looks very typical, but I hear the same thing you're talking about, but, maybe it could be the microphone as well.
Well, damn, he's on a
mic in before I do too much.
Industry standard, a mic. I mean, it should sound incredible.
That should.
That mic doesn't have a switch on it, does it?
Negative. No switch.
He's. I think maybe just take a moment. We're going to be here for a while. Take a moment, look over your settings, look over the bandwidth, TX bandwidth, all of that, and see if there's something you've overlooked. Because I promise you, you can sound a lot better. I've heard hundreds of those Hermes, just beautiful.
All right, I'll be back in a little bit at 6:30. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Okay, John. Are you sitting down?
Yes.
Okay, 600 ohm line shows 98% efficiency. 450 shows 98.2%, and 300 shows 95.8.
Well, there's no reason to change it.
No, and that's on 75 meters.
That's the only place they operate.
Yeah, I would leave well enough alone, but I would get rid of the wraps around the pole.
Well, I don't want to cut it any shorter. I forget the length I came up with, and I wanted to get close to, I don't remember anymore. I wanted to get close to like 93 feet for some reason. I think that's why I got that in there. And it may be 66 feet.
What kind of an ATU are you using?
It's a MFJ one.
Oh, is it the balanced one or a T-network?
Got it. It's the differential T-tuner.
Okay, yeah, it'd be a T. All right. Do you have man-made noise issues?
I do, actually.
Okay, well, if you went to a balanced ATU, you could probably solve some of that because with a T-network, they put the balun on the output, And when you do that, the balun is not really providing a symmetrical feed to the feed line. And when that happens, you don't get total cancellation of your two fields of your conductors on the line. And therefore, the feed line turns into a vertical antenna, which is subjective to man-made noise.
All right, I'm not using the balun in the tuner because I couldn't bypass it. I wanted to go to 40 meters. Remember why? So I got a short piece of coax. I'm actually using an external balun.
Yeah, but the balun is still in the ISWR part of the circuit, is it not?
It's on the coax output instead of the balance output.
Right, but so the that's still, your balun is still in the high SWR part of the circuit, and that's because you're using an unbalanced ATU feeding a balun. So your balun is connected to your 300 ohm line. Your 300 ohm line is in a high SWR part of the circuit, and so is the balun. To get around that, you got to go to a balanced ATU where the balun is on the input to the ATU, not the output.
All right, I got one up in the shop that for a loop, and if I can bypass the tuner part, I'll put it in line.
So, I'm sorry, I just sat back now. Gary, what'd you find out?
Okay, 600 ohm line on John's system models out at 98%, 450 at 98.2%, and 300 at 95.8.
Okay, I mean, that's not so bad. I mean, on this frequency?
Yes.
I mean, that's not too bad.
No, that's good. There's nothing wrong with that.
But then you guys started talking about 40?
Well, no, we're talking about, John said he's got noise issues, and he's running a T network with the balun on the output side of the tuner, which puts it in the ISWR part of the circuit, and that causes an imbalance in the feed line, which turns the feed line into an antenna.
Because the specific model of tuner he's running?
Correct. In other words, the balun is in the high SWR part of the circuit, so a balun, when you do that to it, is not acting truly like a balun.
Yeah, I understand that, yeah. But that's correct. So what do you estimate the losses there, though? Because that's also difficult.
We're not talking about losses so much as we are talking about an imbalanced feed going to the balanced line. So basically the balanced line is radiating in transmit and acting like a vertical or receiving man-made noise and receive.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a real eye-opener. Yep. How could you quantify that with a field strength meter? Like if he threw a low-level carrier and you walked out there?
Well, I'll tell you what. When I switched from a T network with a balun on the output to a balanced tuner with a balun on the input, my noise level here on 75 meters dropped a good 2S units.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that. I mean, that a tuner like he has is, a total disadvantage versus a balanced tuner, and I've told him that before, just so you know. But I wonder, like if he threw a carrier of 25 watts and you walked out there with a field strength meter, do you think you could detect the fact that the feed line was radiating?
Well, the trouble is, what do you compare it to? I would put the field strength meter, within, let's say, a couple of feet of the feed line, and then the only way you'd know, then you have to have something to compare it to. So, that's the big question. But that would be the way to quantify it, would be to switch back and forth between the two tuners, balanced and an unbalanced T network with the balun on the output. What got me going on this is up north in the Spokane area, I was running a T network at the base of my tower. Kind of the same scenarios I'm doing here, except that it was a T network with a balun on the output, and it was a differential capacitor, and it dialed in very nicely and all that stuff. Worked great for a couple of years, and then when we moved down here, I installed the same ATU at the base of my tower, and the same setup again. Everything was working good. I was on AM, and one day we had kind of a warm day, and I looked over, and I was on my Bauer transmitter, and WR starts climbing like crazy. And so, of course, I shut everything down, and I tried all kinds of stuff with that T-network tuner to, basically what was happening was the balun was heating up. Like it was getting so hot you couldn't hold your finger on it. So anyway, I finally figured out what I was doing wrong, and I switched over. I just totally rebuilt the ATU to a balanced tuner. And using that very same balun, I put a solid 1 kilowatt carrier into it for 20 minutes, ski down, and went out there with an infrared gun, and the roller inductors had not changed from ambient at all, and the balun was 1 degree above ambient. Now, when I was running the T-network tuner, I was using a Gates, one of those big Gates roller inductors with a half-inch edge-wound coil. And would you believe I was heating that thing up also because of the high circulating current. So all of that stuff went away when I went to the ballast tuner.
Yeah, I know. I've been trying to tell these guys this for years. I mean, it's just, you know, I went over to a buddy's one time, and he's got a high power amplifier. He's running into a Palstar tuner. He called it the Rock Crusher. And the Rock Crusher Palstar has a fan in it. And he said, man, when I'm cranking the amp up and really putting it out, you know, and rag chewing, that fan cranks up in the tuner and it's blowing heat out in the room. And he thought that was a good thing.
So, you know, that just blows me away. Why, you know, why would a manufacturer have to put a fan in an ATU? Does that strike you odd?
Oh, it blew me away. I walked over to the thing and I said, "There's a fan in here?" He said, "Yeah, it's fan cooled. Yep, that thing will cool itself." And I thought, man, you know, he's probably running 2,500 watts, right? What percentage of power is actually going out to the antenna? Because the fan has to come on, Gary. So, I mean, is there 500 watts lost?
Well, I'll tell you what, I was heating up that big Gates roller inductor with the T-network that I was using, and that has, as I said, it's half-inch wide, edge-wound conductor, and it's almost 1/8 of an inch thick. So what does that tell you?
Yeah, hundreds and hundreds of watts. Yep, I know. Everybody gets away with it with 100 watts, right? They to them the max is low. So that's the actual problem, is because, you know, to the average operator, the max is low. Hey man, this antenna is great. It's low SWR. It's easy to tune. You ever heard that? Easy to tune. Yeah, that's all loss, right? But when they get 500 watts, you know, some kind of little ham radio amplifier, well, they're fine. It doesn't heat anything up. It doesn't cause a problem. They've got a gain, you know, so they think all is well. But it all kind of stops when you run high power.
Yep, you got that right. It separates, it gets you out of the weeds, that's for sure. Oh, I tell you. Well, Clark, I got to tell you one more quick story, and then I got to bail out of here. It is getting way past my shut-eye time. But anyway, I've been running a trap dipole for years up north in Washington State, and fed with RG8 coax, and it worked good. I think I had it operating on 3 bands. And I thought it was working great, no problem at all, and life was good. Then one day I got this wild hair to swap out that RG8 with some ladder line. So I built my own line, stuck it up there in the air, fired up with about 1,200 watts, and everything was looking good. The ATU tuned, as you mentioned, quite nicely, and so on. It lasted for about a minute, and then all of a sudden my SWR just went right against the pin. I go outside and look up, and I didn't have to look up far because the whole antenna was laying on the ground, and one of my traps was laying over in the weeds, smoldering.
On fire?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, Gary, you idiot. You've been wasting your time all these years feeding these antennas and trap dipoles with coax. Oh, I tell you what, I'm a slow learner, Clark.
Well, there's no free lunch.
Oh, you got that right. So anyway, I've never looked back since, and so much for coax-fed resonant antennas.
Unless you only need 1 band, I have a big Mosley up there that covers all the bands, so this one is coax-fed, and it's a cage dipole, and it's absolutely dead flat here, and I don't use it anywhere else, though.
Yep, there you go. I put up a cage dipole up north, and it worked really good. I had less than 2 to 1 across all 500 kilohertz on this band, and I was very happy with it. The only problem is I wanted to operate 160, and I wanted an effective antenna on 160 as well. So I put up a 160, so now I got these 2 antennas up in the air, and I got all this wire up there. I got 2 towers going on. And I'm thinking, man, this is a lot of fooling around. So I switched over to this non-resonant antenna and running both bands and working equal or better than the other LiSHA.
Well, you remember that photo I sent you about a month ago of my little amplifier? That guy likes to run full power into a resonant antenna.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually in flat feet, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just on my Collins S line tonight. This is just an old S3C Collins S line. But yeah, I mean, if I have the big amp on, you swing the other way, right? Because if you have that thing cranked up on this band, well, you're probably better off coax-fed, resonant, a cage dipole, no tuner, nothing in line, right? Because I might melt your tuner there. I got a call the other day. Well, it's been about 6 months, I guess, from a fella back east who's running one of our ATU 4Ks. He said, Gary, I'd like to let you know that I just ran 10K through your tuner and it did great. Yep, if you're on the right frequency and it's matched right, you're good, right? Yep, that's it. And with a 707, the way I've got it set up, I've got to have a 1-to-1 match, otherwise it just doesn't go on the air. Yep. All right, well, that was cool, man. That was really cool to have you on here tonight. We've all, I think, collectively learned a lot, and I really, really enjoy having you here, Gary. I know you have to go, so just let you know, man, this was a real pleasure. Well, thank you very much for letting me jump in, Clark, and it's always enjoyable to touch bases with you, that's for sure, and also you, John. Gentlemen, I do have to go. I'm having trouble with my Vox getting it set up right. I notice I'm clipping out every once in a while. I got to do a little more adjustment, I think. Anyway, you all have a great evening. It's been fun, and we'll have to do it again soon. W7WRX in a group case, 7EMF. I'm going that way. Good night.
Later, Gary. I'm out here, too.
You leaving, John?
Yep.
All right, good night. The guy with the Hermes, are you back? Are you there, Graham?
Yeah, I'm here, but I haven't really figured out what's going on, so I'm not sure, man. I'll have to play around with this more.
Well, you sound okay. I mean, I didn't want to tell you something was wrong, but you're not like high-five 4K wide. I just was, letting you know that.
Yeah, let me switch to 3K. Hold on. All right, now I'm at 3K wide. I don't know if that made any difference or not. Some people who don't listen to me at 4K, and if they listen to me at 3K and I'm running 4K, it can kind of sound kind of weird. Did that make any difference?
Yeah, I mean, it actually did. I'm on an old Collins S line, and I retrofitted 3.1 filters in there. So I'm actually listening to you at 3.1. So, I mean, you sound pretty good, but the only thing is, from a studio mic standpoint, I would expect a fuller sound.
Can you put a different microphone on it?
Negative, no. I only have one microphone, and I'm probably overdriving it there. I only have one microphone right now, so that's it, man. I've never had issues. Typically, most people say it sounds great, and, I've never had any issues.
No, there's no issue. No, nothing's wrong. We're not saying anything's wrong at all. You're very clear. What I'm saying is, if for somebody that's on a 4K wide transmitter with a Shure studio mic, you should be very full. That's all I'm saying. There's absolutely nothing wrong.
No, I agree. There's nothing wrong. But you asked us for a report, so there you go.
Oh, I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it. I don't do much 80, so I appreciate any feedback I can get. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. That's all I'm trying to do.
You want me to record you and send it to you?
Report. I personally wouldn't have thought anything of it. How about you, Clark?
I mean, when he told me it was on a Hermes and a SM7B, I just in my mind I thought, hello, how are you doing? How's everybody going tonight? Full, but he's not that.
No, I agree.
If you guys want to record and email it to me, that'd be great. If you want to do that, that'd be interesting if you guys have the ability to do that. I mean, I can do that on Thetis, and I do that to people from time to time. But yeah, if you've got the ability to record me, I'd really appreciate it. I want to hear how it sounds.
I can record and play it back, but I haven't figured out how to do it yet, and I'm headed for the sack. So good evening, gentlemen. K7PM.
All right, I just recorded you. What's your call sign?
N6 MUD, November 6 MUD at hotmail.com.
One more time.
November 6 Mike Uniform Delta at hotmail.com.